Well, hello and welcome to the Smells Like Money podcast. Join me, Suzanne Chin Taylor, the DooDoo Diva, as I interview guests who are making an impact on how we manage and operate systems for conveying and treating wastewater. As a veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry, each week I'll be bringing you industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Join me each week as I speak with representatives of organizations that are utilizing disruptive or new technologies and methods, and executives who are excited to share how to be successful and sustainable in our vital industry. So whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, in treatment or trenchless, gain tips on training and retaining great talent, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Ready? Let's dive right in. Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. We are continuing our visit today with Harry Hermes of Rainstoppers. Welcome back to the show, Harry.
Thank you so much.
We're going to continue our dialogue from last time where we were talking about how do we make our industry more attractive? Because we're not the only industry. Many industries out there are facing, severe work shortages. But I think our industry more than most across, manufacturing as well as on a municipal level at plants and, crews for collection systems, as well as contractors that support cities, sewer service contractors. So I wanted to get your take as, someone that has been in this industry. Your family's been in the industry. You're now the third generation in your company's business. The changes that you've seen that maybe your forefathers shared with you, and what your insights are on this topic to get the word out about how incredible it is to be part of our industry.
Yeah, so it is incredible. It's still a fantastic industry, even though a lot has changed. I think there's still a lot of perks for being in it. I'm currently working with NASCO on their workforce development committee, and they're really taking a proactive approach on finding out the people that are in industry, why they're here, and on the labor side as well as higher ups, and how they found out about it, and what's keeping them from leaving and what would cause them to leave. And so they're really being proactive on a lot of that. And I think we have a lot of issues that we're facing as an industry and as a country. A lot of the current issues I see with our labor force is due to the bullwhip effect from COVID stimulus. And if you look at, I believe it was 2019 to 2020, companies like Amazon and Walmart's employment jumped 62%. 2019, Amazon had 600,000 employees, and 2020 they had 1.2 million. Gigantic increase due to demand, and we've seen a massive increase in demand on our end as well. But everyone's fighting for those same resources, labor, and I don't think we're doing. I really don't know I don't know why we're failing. I think a big portion of it is lack of knowledge. People don't know what we're doing. They have no idea that we even exist. They flush their toilet, and that's all they think about. They think, I've got buddies who are plumbers and they don't really know much about anything on the municipal side. So it's I think the lack of knowledge is a massive issue, and lack of knowledge of opportunities within the industry is a massive issue. However, labor shortages aren't going anywhere anytime soon. There will be a short-term increase as companies like Amazon lay people off, but in the next 50 years or so, the population hasn't grown enough and isn't continuing to grow to fill the gap that boomers will leave when they retire. And so I think what we will see is a massive increase, hopefully, in innovation, which is scary on some sense. With all of the venture capitalists we have pouring in, they tend to not innovate like a lot of the smaller companies do. The competition, the game is different. The business game is different, is what I would call it. Small businesses compete by innovating and being better than their competitor. Venture capitalists compete by buying their competitor. and who has bigger pockets and who can lose money longer is how they compete. So it's a different game, but I think that there will still be a massive increase in innovation through guys who are working for these large companies and showing and hearing complaints from customers. And we will see a renaissance in a lot of small businesses again in the next generations due to the lack of innovation that these VCs are bringing in, which has changed a lot of the industry and a lot of the perks of it. I think there's still a taste of how friendly it used to be. And I think people miss that. And I think that it will come back, hopefully in a massive way. That's what I'm counting on.
So you see, it's going to be like a cycle. You know, the big businesses came in because we've all seen it where they bought out a lot of great small family-owned companies. And then you do, like you were saying, you hear the stirrings of, you know, customer service goes down, you know, the parts and you go from being a customer, a valued customer, to just being a decimal point on some accountant's spreadsheet that gets reported to Wall Street. And so it's less about how you're servicing the customer, but more how good you look to the shareholders. And I don't, you know, I might get a lot of pushback from saying this, but ours is an industry that can't really be run that way. Because as you said in our prior episode together, is that we're responsible for the safety and health of everybody's lives. And so we're not a commodity. We're not something that, oh, you can find another one of those on the corner. And it is a finite customer pool. So it's, if you don't treat your customer right, somebody else will. And I really loved what you said, that thing of hope that maybe some of these folks that have been part of companies that got bought out will then decide to get bit by the entrepreneurial bug and start something new on their own again, and do some innovation, and it'll come kind of full circle. We'll start to go into a cycle again of innovation.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's unfortunate that so many companies that had lifelong employees, those lifelong employees, now since the company's been bought out, are ready to go. You know, you can't pay for that type of, what's it called? Loyalty. You can't pay for that type of loyalty. There's no number you can put on that. And they've lost it. And these guys are pouring in, this money's pouring in, and they're just getting as cheap as possible in products. And cities are not getting the relationships they used to have, because those salesmen are leaving a lot of times because salesmen are typically a large cost to a company. And so they look at that number and they say, oh, we can just replace you with anybody with a business degree, anybody right out of college. And it's not true, especially when our sales cycle is a year plus on a lot of products. So it'll be interesting. I think that there's going to be a ton of opportunity in the next few years. And if you're looking at it, it's kind of it's writing on the wall for a lot of people. And hopefully a lot of these guys who've been in it for so long and have relationships and have access to people that trust them will start their own companies, and we can kind of have that renaissance of smaller businesses jumping back in. And because some of those older generations have retired, a lot of the people my grandfather worked with that we knew growing up are gone. They've retired, they've sold their businesses and have retired. And so it almost seems like there's not that backup line that there should have been. There's not that second generation of people. It just kind of went to a faceless VC that didn't care. But I heard that happen before. I remember my grandfather talking about that, the large companies that got larger. So this isn't the first time, and we're not the only industry that has faced these type of situations. But hopefully some people, decide to go out on their own, or cities decide, I can't tell you how many small cities aren't getting help that they need, that they need, just because venture capitalists don't see enough zeros in a weird way.
I would agree there. And it's also, something you were that you mentioned about, growth for innovators, because we have to deal with emergencies. I think business and people that are maybe thinking about, oh, this industry looks like a really good investment, with trenchless technology and all of the, development that's occurred, that, infrastructure, it's big business.
Mm-hmm.
It's really big business. But they have to understand, if they're deciding to invest in this industry, is that we are an emergency-based industry. A lot of the people here, they have to respond to emergencies. We're kind of like the fire department.
Yeah.
When there's an SSO in the street or a water main is broken, you can't just say, oh, well, we're kind of busy, or I don't have staff. We'll get to that in another couple of weeks when we have time.
We had the coldest Christmas in the last like 50 years. How many people were working on? I know in our city, we had a ton of water breaks and water freezes that caused massive issues. And I know those guys were working. It didn't matter that it was Christmas Day.
Yeah, exactly. We're like the fire department. You can say, oh, your house is burning down. Oh, I'm sorry, the truck is burned down, and they wouldn't give us a loaner, and we don't have the part for it, so we can't get the truck out. No, it doesn't work that way. It's it's having to understand that there's got to be that service after the sale, because the people that are responsible for this, they have to have that equipment at the ready. In some cases, 24/7, just like a fire truck. It has to be ready to go and hit the ground running. And so I really like that. And the other thing that I wanted to touch on was something that you mentioned, is maximizing the per person. And I wanted to know what you meant by that.
Yeah. I mean, what I meant by that is that as our population decreases, we're kind of in a population crisis, that globally our population's decreasing, and in America specifically it is. Luckily that we still have a lot of immigration and people still want to come here, so that will help us survive some of that. But the next generations aren't having kids like the boomers did. And so our workforce is going to be limited. And I think cities will have to start doing more with what they have. And same with contractors. So I think anything where you can maximize the amount of input to output for a city or a contractor will be the future. Whatever technology it is, I think a lot of contractors will have to get used to, let's say you have a 5-man crew running something like CCTVing, in the future, you may not be able to afford 5 men. It may have to be 3-man to do more with. So innovation is going to be massive. It's going to have to be, just due to the fact of our population. There really is no option. And the ones who come out on top are the ones who will really innovate first and correctly in that sense. So I think any product or service that can get the maximum out with the smallest amount of input as well as cost is just going to be really big in the future.
Well, I also see, and you and I talked about this, the importance of making the industry more attractive through paying well, but just as important as the pay, it's the workforce culture and the workplace culture. In that, there have been a lot of surveys coming out that what is like some of the top things that would make you stay in a job. And believe it or not, of the top 10 things that they had to rank, they listed them in, in what order, put a number next to it. Pay wound up, surprisingly enough, at number 7.
Yeah, I believe that.
Whereas being heard and being allowed to weigh in and contribute ideas came in at 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Which was surprising for a lot of the old guard.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
I think pay has been such a everyone's just like, oh, well, we pay well. Why are people not working? And if you're a company and you're asking yourself that, it's because it has nothing to do with pay. It has to do with your culture. And it's such a big deal. And I don't think enough people focus on it, but they're starting to. There's a public company, it turned public, but they they have some of the best customer service I think I've ever seen, and especially for a massive company. It's called Chewy, and you want to, like, it's
Oh,
ordered.
yes, I buy from them all the time.
They're a few $1 billion. I think their market cap's a few $1 billion. And if you call them and you have an issue with a product, they turn the product off nationwide almost immediately. And they'll follow up with you if your dog has to go to the vet. And people want to work with them because of that and the culture that they produce. And so I think, and not only that, but you can also get a lot more out of employees if they feel like they want to do it, and they feel like they want to do it for whatever your culture is, whether it's being a team, or whatever. I mean, you have people in college football who are willing to hit themselves against each other and cause potential brain damage because they're part of a team and they want to protect their team, so it's extremely valuable. And I think with the VCs pouring in, a lot of that culture is leaving, and those people are really reaching for more of it. And so I think that we will hopefully see, if more people jump in, more of that culture.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think, because of COVID, we lost a lot of our human connection. And I think companies now, as people are coming back together and having to work together because they've been apart for so long, or maybe even they're still remote teams, that when they are together, that they have to invest in, we call it workforce development training, using tools such as, Wiley's Everything Disc, or emotional intelligence, or the Y Institute, to help people understand themselves, understand their coworkers, and really build teams to create, as they say at Everything Disc, they say it's called the aha moment, where you get a bunch of people who really didn't know much about each other, but now that they recognize she needs to receive information this way, he needs to communicate this way in order to get his idea out. And you need to be patient until he can get that out. And once they start to understand each other as to how they need to communicate and receive information, what motivates them, what stresses them, next thing you know, oh, I never knew that upset you.
Yeah.
Or somebody saying, well, I felt like you just never have had time to listen to me. And it was because they have a hard time absorbing information given to them that way. So once you learn how to work together, you bridge those gaps. And now you become a team where there isn't that friction, there isn't that animosity between people, and they're on the same page working together towards the same goal.
Yeah, people want to build something together. They want to be a part of something.
They truly do. They truly do. And like we were saying earlier, being heard and being allowed to contribute instead of, well, I'm the boss and this is the way we're going to do it. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that, sometimes people just need to be heard. And it doesn't even matter if their idea didn't get adopted, but the fact that they were given the chance to at least throw it out there to the table, that makes them feel good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure you do that. I mean, I know as a small company and not a family company, family companies have their own set of, I would call unique issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If everyone working within this company wasn't making decisions on their own every day, we wouldn't function. Because I can't make every decision. And so they have to be able to make those decisions and be able to function on their own without having very strict guidelines, because we have stuff break every single day that if they can't decide and feel as though, not only that, but then get recognition for that. Like, hey, you saved this. This is what your decision making really did, I think is massive. And we struggle with that. I'm terrible at recognition, but I try to get better. And that's my goal for 2023, is to just kind of emphasize, like, hey, being a part of a team and you are valuable. Which is, I think that small businesses do well because they have to, everyone's wearing so many hats.
Yes.
Everyone within this company is doing way more than they're probably being paid for. I know that I've got siblings that work for other companies doing similar stuff to some of our positions, making way more than a smaller company could pay. They also don't have as much satisfaction in a lot of ways. or that team. There's no loyalty. They feel as though like, oh, well, if, the company goes down, we're just going to be laid off. So if I get a job with $10 more, I'm just going to go do it. You know, if you don't value your employees, they're not going to value you either.
Good point. Good point. And they got to have the right, it's a good friend of mine who said, you can teach skills, you can't teach attitude.
Yeah.
Either somebody has it or they don't. And so, I thank you for, coming on and just sharing, your insights on what you see for the industry and the ways that we can, just work together to make it better. I do see that we are, like you were saying, we're going through a shift. And then I love that term. And you kept saying a renaissance.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing the next wave of innovation and new forward thinking companies coming up with ideas, even things that are, well, everybody hates this word, but disruptive. Because I do think sometimes disruptive technologies are good. They shake it up a bit. They make you realize, wow, I've been doing it this way for forever. Well, maybe there is a better way to do that. And like you were saying, people being forced to do more with less. And we have to make sure that we do not burn out the workforce that we do have, because they are so critical to everybody's well-being. And so, well, thank you for, continuing to carry the torch in the industry for your family and staying on, because you said you had other siblings that are doing other things, but, thank you, Harry, for, keeping it alive. It's folks, yeah. Well, no,
I push it to everyone I know. So
yeah, it's folks like you that I think make our industry the fun place that it is. Most people that I talk to, they say, well, what got you into the industry? What made you stay? Was it you like working outdoors? What? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, I stayed because I fell in love with the people.
Yeah. You'll see the same people at every trade show, and they're wearing a different shirt every 3 years,
Yeah,
but it's the same
funny.
people.
They change jobs, but they stay within the industry. It's almost like we get hooked. We get hooked. It says, oh, are you still with? And they'll say, oh no, that was 3 shirts ago. And you just kind of have to laugh about that. But it is, you go to the industry trade shows. It's true. It's almost like if you go every year, it's like going to a family reunion.
Yeah. And I remember being young, and when we first went, and my mom was like taking us around like dogs, like, have you met him? And it was just like, well, everyone here. How do you know everyone at all of these shows? And then I've started doing more and more shows. And I'm like, okay, it's the same people, and everyone's known each other for 10 years,
Exactly.
And they're extremely welcoming. They are extremely welcoming to new people. And I have never had more people come up to me and say, we haven't seen you here before. Come with us. Have you met this guy? Have you met this guy? Here's who. Oh, this is the products you sell. Here's who you need to go meet with. Like, have you talked to the city? Here's his number. Go talk to them. Go do this. Everyone wants everyone to succeed, which I think is extremely rare for a lot of industries.
I've been in many different industries, and I've got quite a few decades on you. And I will say, in my career, I've never seen an industry quite like this one, where there is such a generosity of spirit and wanting to help each other be better as an industry. I've never, experienced anything like it.
I remember the first part.
And it still surprises me to this day, the way just like you were saying, oh, you're new, I haven't seen you here before. Here's who you need to meet. And people like introducing you to people, and it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll get that anywhere else.
No, I haven't heard other people talk about it within like their work. We're unique in that sense. I remember my first like after party I went to at WEFTech, and I'm walking around talking to people, and I'm like, what do you do? Oh, CCTV. What do you do? CCTV. And then I realized, like, this is a CCTV competitors party. Everyone here does CCTV. And they were all joking around that, they would joke about jobs that maybe they had lost or lost to the other guy. And they were joking about it. And there was no animosity or anger or anything. It was very, very eye-opening early on.
Yeah, one of the things that happens sometimes in our industry is co-opetition. I have, two clients that they worked in the same area, and a big contract was coming up in the local municipality, and it was going to demand almost like round the clock work, a lot of easement into very, very challenging access points. And they specified that they wanted the reports done a certain way, and they needed certain things done within a certain time constraint. And they looked at each other, or they looked at the bid, and both of them realized they knew each other from the local, WEA meeting. And it's like, okay, we both run the same camera equipment. We both are running the same software. I don't have enough personnel to do this contract myself. And I'm not going to buy another rig and hire more people for just a temporary contract. You don't have enough. Why don't we go in on it together?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And they beat out a guy who did have the staff, but they went in on it together. And as a result, these two owners of these two businesses did this project together and then wound up being lifelong friends, like best buddies.
Wow, that's awesome.
And it's just, that's something that I don't think you're going to see that in other industries. And you never know, because you might be out on a project, especially if you're a sewer service contract, you might be out on a project and something has come up that all of everybody will tell you there's no such thing as a perfect project except the one that hasn't started yet, where you get in the CCTV footage or the lay of the land or the scope of work or whatnot, and something starts to go terribly south and you're in trouble. And isn't it nice to be able to pick up the phone with someone who's maybe handled something like this before and say, hey, Joe, I'm out on a job. This is what I'm running into. Have you ever seen anything? And Joe says, yeah, I can tell you exactly what to do. Do you have this, this, and this? I'm like, no, I don't have that tool. Well, give me an hour. I got to run to the shop. I'll go get it and I'll bring it to you. And I hear those kind of stories in the industry all the time.
Yeah. I remember
people helping people in a pinch.
I remember jumping in here, and when my grandfather passed away, a lot of his knowledge was gone with him. He was the business. But I remember him telling me, like, hey, if you ever have an issue with making our units, call this guy. He's our competitor. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I called him one day, and we had a 3-hour conversation, and he told me everything. It was like there was no secrets, and he helped me, and it was like he wanted nothing but for us to succeed, even though we're competitors in the same market, And he said, here's how you do it. Here's the issues we have. Here's what we functioned. And thankfully we've been able to return some of that to him. But I remember thinking, like, he could have put the blade in our heart that just sunk us. And instead he helped us up to really continue to be a business.
Welcome to the industry.
Yeah.
But and on that very happy, positive note, we're going to sign off. But Harry, again, thank you for coming on the show. And for those of you who are interested in maybe learning more about Harry's company, Rainstopper, if you would give us the website address, please, and then spell your name so they can find you on LinkedIn and connect.
Yeah, it is rainstopper.us. And my name is Harry Hermes, HarryHermes IV.
All right. Well, again, thanks. And thanks of you to tuned in today to this week's episode of the podcast. And until next time, keep it flowing. Thanks so much for joining me, the DooDoo Diva, on this week's episode of Smells Like Money. What stood out to you this week? Share your takeaways by leaving me a review. You can find out more about the new technologies, creating sustainable solutions, and insights on how to succeed in our vital industry by subscribing to the show. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in wastewater infrastructure, treatment, or trenchless, you've got it all right here at Smells Like Money. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest for the show, book a quick chat with me by visiting calendly.com/the2it group/B-A-podcast-guest, or simply click the link in the show notes below. Until next week, a big shout out to all my industry friends and those who will be. You are my superheroes. Thanks for tuning in, keeping it flowing, and we'll see you all next week.